Hey everybody, so as you may know, I had the Lexmoto Michigan on loan from Lexmoto to do some reviews and videos on, and there's a thing about that bike which they're doing, and they said because I do the metalworks, if you're not aware, I do clocks and things, and some of those are painted, so they're only small bits of spraying. They said you fancy trying to spray a tank, because what they've done with this bike is the entire bike is black apart from the tank. So if you buy one of these primered tanks and paint it yourself, you can almost completely change the look of the bike, because obviously the only coloured part of it is the tank. So as I say, to that end, they are selling these primered tanks ready to go. So I need to get it out, have a little look at it, see what we need to do, and I'll do that now. I think some Lexmoto have included some of these classic Lexmoto stickers. I'm afraid I won't be using those, only because I know I won't get them straight. Okay, so there is the tank itself. As you can see, it's masked off everywhere. The fuel pump hole wasn't for some reason. That's been taken off. And this is covered, but I'm going to need to trim that just a little bit. Now there is something I need to explain. You can buy one of these tanks and have it sprayed professionally for like £150 to £250 maybe, or well, you know, the sky's the limit depending on what you want done to it. You could just have it one colour, you could even have it airbrushed, whatever your budget allows, whatever you want to do. However, there is the cheap homemade way, and that is what I'm going to do. So before people start commenting, best practice is to do this, best practice is to do that. Understand, I know that, and I'm doing it the fast way. I still think the results should be okay. And at the end of the day, it's going to be done super cheap. So just before anyone gets on to some big, you know, I'm a spraying expert, I'm going to tell you every single thing you did wrong. I know. I'm going to be doing this with Rattle cans as well, because I don't have a spraying setup. So this really is very much like the cheapest way you can do it, and definitely not the best way. Just want to make that clear. Right, with that being said, let's move forwards and actually get on with this. I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to paint it, you're going to see as the video progresses. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just run some 1000 grit paper over this just to smooth the base out, because prep is everything. You might find with your one that you could go straight to painting, but I can feel a couple of bits of grit here and there. Not a lot, little bits. So I want to just run some wet and dry 1000 grit over that, just to knock down the surface a little bit. Best practice then would be to primer it again. Get a nice fresh coat of primer on there, let that go, and then paint it. I think that would be the best practice. Again, I'm not doing that, I'm being super cheap. First thing I need to do is trim that. I was going to try and use this, what was coating it before, but it's really thick and plasticky, it's no good. There we go. So we've got that masked off. Ideally I'd like to mask this from the inside, but there's actually like pins or inserts there, so I can't do that. So I'm going to just mask it and then trim as close as I can, and it will have to do, because we are doing this the quick and cheap way. Just covering up those screw holes. Okay, so I've got that masked off. I've also covered up these pipes just so no paint gets in that way. And we covered that side. I do want to just block this little hole. There we go. Right. I'll be honest with you, the only side I'm going to wet and dry is the top side, just to make sure it's smooth, because that's where everyone's going to feel. Again, as I said, I'm doing this the quick and cheap way. Spend much more time on it than me. There is also a reason why I need to do this bit, or look at the water pattern. Okay. Yeah, that could be pretty cool. You'll see later in the video. Oh, that's a million times better. Just dry that off. Kitchen towel is not the best thing because it can leave fluff behind, but I'm going to be blowing this off with an airline. I'll also be leaving it for a while to make sure it properly dries out. That is so much smoother. That just taking the care, even though I'm not being very careful about this, just to give it a once over with some wet and dry has smoothed that out no end. The base coat is going to be white. It's a slightly off-white. It's actually, what is this? It's Citron Alpine White. I've used this in some of the clocks I've made when I've needed white because it's quite a brilliant white, but not white. And there's a reason for that because I want it to blend into what I'm doing. Though to be honest with you, on camera that probably looks cream because of the lighting I have. Unfortunately, colour correction is a bit of an issue when it comes to being indoors filming. Okay, so I'm going to spray this now, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate, as I say, on just this inside part. Doesn't matter if it goes over a bit, we can blend that in. So what I'll be doing now is putting down a nice thin coat, and then I'll let that flash off for a bit, and then I'll put another nice thin coat. And I just want to make sure that I've got a good coat of paint, and you can see that it is the pigment of the paint, not being dulled by the grey. The base colour will make a difference. If you wanted to do a white tank and you want it to be white, you'd need to spray a white primer first, just to make sure, because if you put grey under white, you're always going to end up with a slightly greyer white. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that for a bit, and I'll come back and do another coat. By the way, I've got windows open both ends of my garage, and I'm not going to be standing in here in between coats. I'm just going to turn the camera off and leave. Okay, so that's got a reasonable coat. As I say, it's underneath. I'm not worried about the colour so much, more just we've got a seal on it. And we've got that now, so I'm now going to let that set for a little bit before we flip it over and do the rest of the white. Okay, so there's the underside. Now I need to do the top side. And as I say, I think the easiest way I'm going to be able to do this is like that. Do one side of it and I can get around it, and as long as I grab it from here, I won't touch any paint. So again, I've just got to go with it. Okay, now we're just going to have to let that flash off for a bit, and then we'll get on to the next coat. Apologies if this looks a little whiter. It has had a second coat that my camera's been playing up, but I think I've got it sorted now. If I have, you're seeing this. I hope to God this is working. Okay, so it's taken one 300ml can to do 2 good coats over the whole thing. I'm now going to let that flash off for a while before I do probably one more coat, and then we'll go on to the green. Or did I just give something away? Okay, so there we go, we've got a nice tone of white evenly throughout. Sorry about the lighting again. I have to deal with the studio setup I have. Studio, yeah, there's a bit of a strong word. Okay, so we've got the base colour done. I've had a couple of little tiny hairs appear that I've managed to brush out the surface, and they've not left any marks or anything. Someone did some flocking in this garage at some point. How long ago was it? About 6 months ago, and to this day I still have flocking in the air in here. But now comes the scary bit, because now I'm going to be putting on the main colour. I had this paint made custom to a colour that I wanted. Now the reason why this is going to be a bit nerve-wracking is because it's a bright colour, and I want to do a fade basically, so the front end is kind of mostly the colour and then fade it down the tank a bit, and then I'm doing another effect on the top of that. So this bit, I only need the tank in this position because I'm spraying that way, because to do a fade you want to change the angle of the can, so rather than completely coating this part you're sort of fading it away. I'm not an expert spray painter. Okay, but that's kind of the point. This is the way that anyone could do it. Please go well. I'm going to let that coat flash off a bit before I go back for more. Right, that's it, calling it. I think that's enough. We are relatively even. Okay, I'm going to let that dry for a little while before I do the last technique. Thing is, when I do the last one, I cannot move the tank afterwards until it's completely dry, so I want to try and get this done tonight and then leave it to dry overnight. I've just turned the halogen lamp off to try and show you the true colour. And it's not showing great in here, but this fade is actually pretty good in the way that I wanted it to be. It's fairly even all over, the colour's alright at the front, and then I've still got to do another technique on the top of this, which I'll do when that's dried a little bit more. Okay, I have to readjust everything, yeah, so now I can get side to side this way, and I can get side to side this way, because I need to make sure my planes of paint go this way and not this way. Okay, so white one over to one side because we don't want to get confused and use the wrong one at wrong points. So blue cans here, white cans over here. And now I need to spray the top of this to make a nice raindrop pattern. Thing is, if I use big splodges, it will take forever for them to dry out. So, but smaller ones aren't so noticeable. So I've got to kind of go somewhere in between. Just go for it. I'm trying not to do any on the sides either, I just want it to be on the top. Right, now from a very shallow angle across. Even it out. Okay then, the other direction. With the white. Not a lot. Just need to get a little bit. Okay, that's it. I now have to just leave that for however long it takes for that water to completely dry off, so probably overnight. So at the moment it looks like raindrops because it is actually water, but it won't be when we're done, but it will still look like it. And now it's the following morning, and as you can see it's dried flat. It's completely flat. It might look 3D, but it's not. But this will really pop once we get the clear coat on. Okay, now I need to change my setup slightly. Okay, so as you can see I've got everything covered in sheets, so sorry if it looks a bit messy. I just want to make sure this clear coat doesn't get anywhere I don't want it to be. I've hung the string from the rafter and I've got a hook on it, and I've hooked the tank up by its attachment point. I spent most of last night thinking, how am I going to clear coat this tank? Like, which way am I going to do it? Because if I do it this side and then have to turn it to this side, I'm not going to be able to blend them very easily. And I would like to have done it so the top was flat, so we got that perfectly flat. But I think as long as I make sure I get a good tack coat on and then get a good coat after that, it should be fine. We won't get any runs, and where it will pull will be around this entire front side if it's going to do anything like that, and it shouldn't cause anything you can see, I hope. Okay, so this is the 2-pack clear coat I'm going to be using. 2-pack clear coats basically have 2 parts to them. There is another canister inside here with a hardener, and then you have a lacquer, and they react to each other, and that's what sets the clear coat. Normal solvent-based clear coats, it's just a spray on and that's that, are solvent-based entirely, generally. I'm no expert, but this is what I understand. And the thing is with those is that although yes they can be petrol resistant, they're never going to be that resistant because they're solvents, solvent based, and petrol is a solvent, so it eventually gets through it. 2-pack shouldn't get that problem. This is actually the first time I have personally used a 2-pack, so I'm hoping this is going to go well. I'm going to quickly blow the tank off with an airline, just very gently, not too close, just to make sure there's no dust on it. Let everything settle for a moment, and then I need to do this. Is there anything I need to do before I do this? Prepare, prepare, prepare. Run through it in your head multiple times before you actually commit to doing this, because you need to make sure everything's set up correctly. So even do like a dry run, like imagine you've done this and you move over here, try and paint it, see if anything gets in your way, if there's going to be any problems. Pull and twist to release activator, shake aerosol for at least 2 minutes after agitator ball is free. Wish me luck. As you point out with this stuff, it's very important to use a respirator because it's nasty stuff. Not like normal solvents, this will do you some damage. So don't do this in an enclosed environment with no ventilation and no respirator. I've got the window open at one end, the garage door open at the other end, and I've got a nice breeze coming through, and I've got my respirator, and I'm going to be painting it and then evacuating. The first coat I'm going to do is going to be a very thin coat, and that's going to help the next coat hold on in place and not run. So I need a nice thin even coat overall. Got to keep shaking this for another 30 seconds and then I'm going to do it. Okay, one last coat and I'm going to leave it for 24 hours to cure, and then I can see how it came out and what we've got to do to get it as good as possible. Okay, well the next time you see it, it'll be completely dry and we can see what we're dealing with. Okay, so the lacquer is now hard. We had a few issues with the surface, which I'm going to show you now. This is actually very difficult to film because it's so bright, but as you can see here, it's actually not too bad. It's pretty flat, but on some places there's a little bit of orange peel, and on the top there's a little bit of roughness. But this should be solvable with some wet and dry. So I've got various wet and dry papers that have been soaking for a few hours, starting at 1200, ending at 2000. I've also got some buffing compound that I'll be using with a drill attachable buffing sponge thing. And I've also got some nice clean microfibers that have definitely got no metal fragments in them. As soon as I realised I had a few surface issues because of the texture of the paint underneath, I went pretty thick with the lacquer, knowing that I was going to have to sand it back, but it means I've got more material to work with, so I don't have to worry so much. But I'm going to go very gentle, very easy, and work my way up through the grits. I might not go as low as 1200, I'll see what it's like. So what I'm going to do now is just stick some music on, sit here in the garden, and just sand and sand and sand and sand. I will note I'm using sunglasses because otherwise I'm going to blind myself. But I've suddenly realised, I don't think I've ever shown these. These sunglasses are some very, very old Oakleys. And I actually custom painted them with a similar effect. I hope it's focusing. You want to make sure when you're wet sanding that you keep it wet. Yeah, I'm going to start at 1200 and I'm just going to go over the whole thing a couple of times, and then I'll go down and down and down until I feel happy with it, and then we can buff it out. Remember that I'm doing this super cheap. And obviously prep work may have helped me not have this problem in spraying this, but the spray might have been because I've never used this type before and I didn't go thick enough to start with. The other thing is, with the technique I do, I can't touch it after it's set, and it will not be flat for that reason, so you do get a bit of texturing because of it. But with the normal solvent based lacquers I use, it really smooths it out, so it's not been a problem up until now. I'm not sure that that 2-pack has got enough solvent in it to actually melt the surface properly, which is something I was hoping it would do. It might also be just something I've done wrong, it's quite possible, but the point is, it's rectifiable, so I'm just going to get on with this. Put on some music. From time to time, give it a feel, give it a wash off, and see if you can feel that it feels smooth, and if it feels smooth, then you've done okay. There's still a few spots I need to get to. So that feels pretty much smooth all over. So I'm now going to go up to the next grit and do that again, and then the next grit. Okay, to me it feels smooth all over. I still want to do the buffing on it, so I'm going to go with it. I might come back and have to sand it a bit more. I don't want to go too much further with it. It will look a bit cloudy probably. Might not be showing very well on camera, but there is a sort of a matte sheen to it. So hopefully this buffing compound will just polish this all now. Okay, so I have a polishing mop, I have some compound. This is water soluble, so I can thin it a little bit, and I'm just going to go over it and see how this goes. Okay, quite a bit of time's progressed, and I just kept on polishing it. I then went to the mop again on a much higher speed, and it is pretty good, but there's a few marks in it I'm not too pleased with. It's really hard to show on camera, and I sometimes wonder if I'm being too pernickety, but yeah, I'm going to go back over it with the mop on a higher speed and just hope that it takes it down a bit more. And yes, I'm losing light, so sorry if it looks a bit weird. Just cleaning all the compound off, and then I'm going to dry it, and then I'm going to give it a layer of polish. I could probably use a higher build polish that would help even more, but I don't have it. All I have is this, which is some detailer wax. I'm hoping this will do the trick, otherwise I'll have to find some thicker wax. You can now do the really satisfying thing. Oh, wasn't that satisfying? I'll get better footage tomorrow because I'm dealing with very low light here, but see, it's got an even blend across each side, nice and green up front, and then the rain pattern, which sparkles blue a little bit in the sunlight because I've used that blue metallic. A bit closer. You might be able to see some of the very slight imperfections in the clear coat. They're very small. If a professional did this, you would be like, no, it's your own thing. Well, you could take a lot longer to do it. I'll do a sort of recap tomorrow, but for a rattle can job, that ain't half bad. Okay, now it's time to see what the tank looks like on the bike. Okay, not as much time has passed as the light would make you think, but I did have to drain the tank basically to get it off. One cool thing though is I've just spoken to Lexmoto, and because I've already drained the tank, I was like, it's so easy for me to switch the pump over now. should I just do it? And they said, yeah, we can change the legal documentation so it's all legal. So that's what I'm going to do. Okay, you should actually change the seals when you do this, but it should be okay for this use. So I just need to take off the fuel pump and the fuel meter. I'm just going to uncover this, ready to fit it all. Okay, so we've got these vent tubes which we've uncovered, that's been uncovered, and now we've just got to peel this one. Right, and then we can transfer things over. Okay, so this will be the fuel gauge. You have to kind of worm it in. There we go. So there's the fuel pump. Okay, so note this spigot, this one, and also note this cable, and also this port. That last port is this one here. The fuel lines just push in, which are these ones here. You have a long hose, which is the vent line at the front of the tank. There's a smaller hose, shorter one, which is a vent line in the middle, and then you've got the connector for the fuel gauge. So I'm just going to pop this back on. And no, I don't have any nozzles, they all leak. As long as it starts, this is the finishing touch. Okay, I'm pretty pleased with this. Side stand up. I think we're probably primed by now. Okay, after all that work, it is done, and I actually think it looks amazing. In a minute I will show you a bit of video and some pictures of it closer up, but I want to do a proper sort of reveal video for a bit of fun in the future, once I get the paperwork back from Lexmoto that this is now being converted on the V5, and once that's the case I can legally ride it again. That's something you'll have to do if you do this to your bike. You'll have to, if you change the colour, you'll have to inform the DVLA of the colour change and your insurance company. It won't be expensive to convert that over, it's just something you do need to make sure you do. Turnaround on that is normally 2 to 4 weeks, so yeah. So as I say, I will show you a few pictures and a little bit of video now, but I'll do a proper reveal in some much better light in the future when I can get it out on the road. So obviously a massive thanks to my Patreon supporters, and a huge thanks to Lexmoto for lending me the bike for the reviews. There are videos on my channel now if you want to have a look, but also for offering me a tank to spray it, and for also covering the costs of spraying it. So thank you to Lexmoto for that. Really appreciate the opportunity to, well, I've never sprayed a tank before. Now I will, before we go to the reveal, I will show you there is a fault with this. Which is not entirely evident unless you get super close, and that is the very first layer of lacquer that went on. I think I should have just gone thick to start with. I did give it a nice thin film, but it left a little bit of texture, and it's meant that there is some very slight dimpling, and the surface is flat, but you can see underneath some like what looks like dimples with their flats. They're obviously hidden underneath. So yes, it wasn't perfect, but considering this was done in a garage with Rattle cans, I'd be happy. Please remember to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you all next time. If you enjoyed this video and the other content on the channel, please consider following the links in the description to show your support.